Hey guys, and in just under a week from now, F1 will return to one of the most loved and most popular circuits in the world, of course being the Nürburgring. Obviously next week's Eiffel Grand Prix will be held at the Nürburgring GP circuit, but today I wanted to go back in time and see what F1 was like before the GP circuit, but instead on the green hell itself, the Nordschleife. So that's why we're here in Assetto Corsa. I'm going to be driving in a pack of these incredible Lotus 72s, a car that raced here in Formula 1 on 4 separate occasions, for only a 2-lap long race, because in these old cars 1 lap is over 7 minutes, and I'll be racing against the AI to see what F1 was like at the Nürburgring Nordschleife back in the 70s. So without further ado, let's begin. So here we are at the Nordschleife, starting in 16th place right at the back of the pack, and let's see how we do in this 2-lap race against the AI. As the lights go out, and it is surprisingly hard to get away in these cars. For some reason it feels like they have traction control on, weirdly enough. Now diving down the outside into turn 1, very short run to turn 1, incredibly difficult to get it right. Now getting past the car on the left there, coming into Hatzenbach, and trying to get past another car, getting a bit too greedy, pushing them onto the grass. Bit of a clumsy mistake by me, but then we come into the next section, diving down the inside into the next section of Hatzenbach, but going a bit wide, moving onto the cobble on the outside there, and they get the place back, getting on the curbs on the inside and almost losing it, as the curbs here at the Nordschleife are incredibly high, so you really need to take them with a lot of caution. Losing a lot of time to the car in front now, as the car behind is inching ever closer to our back wing, as we now come onto this short straight on the way to Flugplatz. Still trying to get into the slipstream of the car in front, trying to get any advantage I can to close that gap down, as we now come into the long right-hander of Flugplatz. A little bit of a jump there coming over that hill, as we now make our way around Flugplatz. A very fast corner, especially in modern F1 cars, but a lot slower in these older ones. As we now thunder back to another short straight, this time on the way to Orenburg, one of the only overtaking opportunities on the entire circuit. Breaking into this long left-hander, as there's a yellow flag up ahead, wonder what's happened, and it looks like there's been a crash on the left there, as 2 cars are parked on the gravel on the side. Lucky to not get involved in that, as we come into one of my favourite parts of the circuit, this long downhill descent into Ardenner Forst, slowly closing the gap to the car in front, inching ever closer to their back wing. As we come back up the hill now, finding the braking zone, getting quite close, almost hitting the curb on the inside there. Now coming into one of the slower corners on the circuit, inching closer to the car in front, and having a look down the inside there, but it doesn't look like that's possible. Now trying to get a good exit through this corner here, trying to stay with the car in front. As we now get into the slipstream of the car in front, want to close that gap up closer and closer. As we now come into one of the scariest corners on the circuit in my opinion, as we come into the braking zone, almost hitting the car in front there, very close. Almost causing a collision there, that could have been bad. Still staying right behind them, however, hoping to make a move and make up a position. As we now come into Kallenhard, darting to the inside line, braking hard, braking late, and maybe a bit too late, running onto the curbs on the outside. They're going wide through that corner and losing tons of time to the car in front. Now we really need to get a move on, as we're forming a bit of a train behind us as we come through this long right-hander, closing the gap to the car in front considerably. Just behind them now, coming into this tight corner, round the outside, coming into there, taking the long way round, trying to make the move, still there on the left. And I think we've just about made the position as we cut across and take the position and take up yet another place. As it's now our job to chase the cars in front. Coming into this medium speed left-hander, almost touching the curbs on the outside, they're going a bit wide as we come into this uphill right-hander. Surprisingly tricky corner that. Very difficult to get the car settled through such a massive elevation change. But anyway, coming into one of the fastest sections of the entire track now, as there's a brief glimpse of a yellow flag in the corner there, and I think we know why, as there is a car spun round on the inside there, forcing us onto the grass and forcing us into the barrier. In real life that would be a pair of broken legs, but luckily enough this isn't real life, this is sim racing. Still in hot pursuit of the cars in front now, as we're about halfway through the first lap, coming into this long fast section, almost flat out all the way to just before the carousel actually. But anyway, skipping ahead towards the end of the lap now and coming through Plamsgarten and towards the Kleins carousel, the second carousel at the Nürburgring. Trying to go down the inside of the car in front there, but it doesn't look like that's possible. as we're still right there with them, trying to see if we can make a move. Now coming into the carousel, oh, braking hard, slight contact there, but nothing major, as we lose just a bit of time to the car in front, so we do need to close up the gap as we now come round the final corner before the long straight of Dottinger-Ho. Incredibly crucial to get this corner just right coming onto the long straight, so you can set yourself up nicely, maximise the car, as we now go onto the top of 5th gear, full speed. Down the main straight we go, trying to get into the slipstream of the car in front, but I don't think it will make much difference as they are miles ahead, as we now skip ahead once again, now on lap 2 of the race. Another yellow flag in the same place as before, Arenberg, and another car crashed out at the same place. Weird coincidence. As we now come out of Arenberg and come towards Foxhole, I think it's called in English, closing the gap to the car in front now, getting closer and closer and closer. Can almost touch the rear wing now as we come towards Ardenner Forst once again, turning in nice and cautiously, aiming for the apex in the inside there, as we now come to one of the slower parts on the circuit, just behind the car in front now, oh, locking up slightly, going into there, going a bit wide, but nothing major, was still just behind the car in front. Now coming onto this short straight, trying to keep the car behind at bay, and trying to close the gap to the car in front, as we come towards the most difficult corner on the entire circuit in my opinion. Now coming in nice and easy, going really wide there, taking up as much of the track as possible, even dipping a wheel onto the grass briefly, as we now are just behind the car in front, diving down the inside into Callanhard, trying to make the move stick this time, still there on the side. Let's see if we can get past, still side by side, and we have to yield coming through that corner, slight contact but nothing major, as the car in front goes onto the grass on the outside there, as we round this long right-hander, just behind them now as we come into the braking zone, diving down the outside. Let's see if we can make the move stick. Taking the long way round, still there on the inside, still side by side, and I think we've just about made the position, and there we go, another position in the bag. Now trying to power away from the cars behind and get ever closer to the cars in front. Coming through here, a bit wide once again, getting stuck on the curbs on the outside there, as we now come into the uphill right-hander. Little bit twitchy through there, but nothing major. We still have a considerable gap to the cars behind, as we now make our way to Bergwerk corner. But first we look in the rear view mirror, and we see the car just behind us as we go wide through that corner, going onto the grass and spinning right round, and coming back onto the track and crashing into the car behind, causing them to go both out of the race. Now skipping ahead and coming into the carousel, easily the most famous corner on the Nordschleife section of the Nürburgring, and maybe the Nürburgring in its entirety, as we now make our way onto the long fast final sector of the Nordschleife. By this point I was pretty exhausted and pretty tired. I think I put the force feedback on my wheel maybe just a tad too high, but that being said, that's not even close to how crazy it would have been for the actual F1 drivers driving these death traps in the 70s. I mean, infinite respect to how crazy it must have been driving these things, especially at the Nürburgring. Now coming into Wipperman, trying to push the car as hard as possible on the final sector of this lap, seeing if we can get any closer to the car in front on the limited time we have left. Going through this right-hander, going quite wide over there, hitting the curbs on the outside. Now coming through the downhill left-hander of Brunken, trying to keep it nice and steady, as we now go down this right-hander, going onto the curbs on the outside there, going quite wide, as we now go back up again. It's like a roller coaster here on the end of the Nordschleife, going onto the curbs on the outside there and making full use of the track. As we now skip ahead to the end of the race, and there's a yellow flag in front coming into Tiergarten, the final couple of corners of this race, and as we see in front there are two cars stranded on the grass on the outside there. Not sure what happened, probably a crash, but there we go, 2 more positions for us. Thank you very much, as we round the final corner and take the checkered flag in probably a pretty bad position, but oh well, at least we had fun. So yeah, there we go, that was a vintage Formula 1 race at the Nordschleife, and well, this was one of the most time-consuming videos I've ever made. I mean, this take you just saw was probably my 16th or 17th, so needless to say, it took quite a while. But anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to subscribe, comment, share, and I'll be back in the next video. See ya!